Welcome to The Deep Dive, where we dig into stacks of research to bring you the insights that matter. Today, we're tackling something really fundamental, this idea of the fragile covenant of justice. That unspoken deal between us and the state, that basic belief that the police, the courts, they'll act with integrity. It's a sacred trust. But what happens when that trust shatters? When corruption gets its hooves into the very institutions meant to uphold the law? That's what we're exploring. Our mission today is to look at 5 really powerful cases, instances of institutional betrayal across 5 countries: the Czech Republic, the US, Australia, the UK, and Russia. Each one's different, yeah, but they all show these universal truths about power, accountability, and, well, the tough road to reform.
Exactly. And these aren't just, a few bad apples. These cases often point to deeper systemic failures, cultures where wrongdoing could just fester. Our aim here is for you to quickly get a handle on not just what went down, but why these moments are so vital for understanding how societies hold together, or sometimes don't. We're pulling out those key takeaways, those surprising connections, so you come away really informed.
Okay, let's jump in. First stop, the Czech Republic. Patriots, 2013. The country's seen as this post-communist success, right? But underneath, there's still this fuzziness between politics, business, the state. Public cynicism was pretty high. Lots of people felt the elite didn't really play by the rules. An environment really perfect for clientelism.
Right, where connections mattered more than anything. You had these powerful lobbyists, these sort of godfathers like Roman Janoušek, Ivo Riddick, allegedly pulling strings behind the scenes, steering state contracts. And the Czech case really shows how one person, right at that intersection of power and personal trust, can become this critical weak point. That person was Jana Nagyová. She was the prime minister's chief of staff.
More than just an administrator, though.
Oh, much more. She was incredibly close to Prime Minister Petr Nečas, one of his most trusted people. And this influence was, let's say, amplified by a close personal relationship. He was going through a divorce at the time. So you had this massive concentration of power, but without real formal accountability, it was, well, a recipe for abuse.
Perfect storm, as you said. And when it finally broke, it was dramatic, like something out of a movie almost. These coordinated raids, cash and gold seized. So what were the actual allegations, the things that brought the government down?
Yeah, the details are pretty stunning. Sources point to 2 main things, tightly linked. First, just a breathtaking abuse of power. Nagyová accused of ordering military intelligence, the military, to spy on the prime minister's wife, Radka Nečasová.
His wife? Seriously.
And the police said the motive was purely private, tied to Nagyová's relationship with the PM, getting info for his divorce, using national security for personal drama.
Wow.
And second, classic political bribery. Nagyová allegedly cooked up a deal, offering cushy jobs on state company boards to 3 MPs from the PM's own party, Fuchsa, Tlucher, Najdre, who were blocking a controversial tax bill. Get them to resign, pass the bill, give them jobs. That was the alleged deal.
The fallout must have been instant.
Oh, immediate and massive.
Yeah.
Nečas resigned June 17th, 2013. His whole cabinet went with him. And those raids you mentioned, unprecedented. 31 locations hit simultaneously, government offices, Ministry of Defense. They found, 150 million Czech crowns in cash, plus gold?
That's about $7.8 million US.
Exactly. It just confirmed everyone's worst fears about corruption at the top. You saw it in the polls. Transparency International found 71% of Czechs thought public officials were corrupt. 59% felt that way about Parliament itself. A huge blow to trust.
But you mentioned a paradox.
Right. Because while it showed deep rot, the investigation itself by the police, by the prosecutors acting independently like that was unprecedented. It was actually a sign, maybe a painful one, but a sign of democratic institutions starting to function, holding power accountable.
So did it lead to real change, real reform? I know those 3 MPs got released because of parliamentary immunity.
Yeah, that complicated things. But the scandal did create momentum. It really shone a light on murky lobbying practices. So proposals for a proper lobbying act came forward. It definitely underscored the need for independent law enforcement.
But you sense a but coming.
Well, yeah. There's still this lingering shadow. Patronage, nepotism. They didn't just vanish. Look at a 2023 OECD survey. Only 19% trust in government. 19%. That shows these are deep wounds, right? Legislation alone doesn't fix that level of distrust.
And it opened the door for populists.
Definitely fueled the rise of figures like Andrej Babiša, tapping into that widespread disillusionment.
Okay, let's shift gears. Across the Atlantic now to the U.S. Chicago, Cook County, late 70s, early 80s. And here, it wasn't just, corruption affecting justice. It felt like corruption was the system.
Yeah, it was described as almost a mundane, systematized bureaucracy of graft.
Mundane, like everyday stuff.
Exactly. Petty hustles. A lawyer slipping a clerk like $2 to get their case called sooner. Clerks selling tickets to fundraisers for judges, and where your case ended up depended on whether you bought tickets.
Wow.
And it went way beyond petty cash. There was apparently a whole tariff system, a set bribe for a specific outcome.
Up to fixing murder cases.
Reports suggest judges took $10,000 to fix murder cases. The acquittal of mob hitman Harry Alleman, for instance, was widely believed to be fixed. Justice literally for sale.
So how did they even begin to tackle something that ingrained?
That's where Operation Greylord comes in. The FBI launched this massive 3.5-year undercover sting.
Undercover.
In the courts.
Yep.
They had people like prosecutor Terrence Hake posing as Dirty, first as a prosecutor, then a defense lawyer, wearing a wire, recording everything.
That sounds incredibly risky. And they needed solid proof, right? Not just hearsay.
Absolutely. Which led to some really audacious tactics, stuff never done before.
Like what?
Well, for the first time ever in the U.S., they got authorization to bug a federal judge's chambers. Judge Wayne Olson's chambers in narcotics court.
Bugged a judge's chambers.
And they didn't just listen. The FBI actually staged fake crimes. They set up phony arrests, ran them through the system, had their undercover agents pay the bribes, and got it all on tape. Irrefutable evidence.
The fallout from that must have been enormous. A real crisis of confidence, as the sources call it.
Oh, completely devastating. When the indictments finally came down in late '83, 92 officials charged. 92.
Including judges.
17 judges. Plus 48 lawyers, 8 cops. It just rocked the foundations of the legal system there. Public trust, gone. And the human cost. Some couldn't face it. Judge Alan Rosen caught taking bribes in divorce cases. He took his own life.
Just tragic. But for those convicted, the sentences were actually quite stiff.
They were, unusually so for this kind of corruption. Judge Richard Lefevre got 12 years. Judge Thomas Murphy, the one linked to fixing murder cases, got 16 years. Sends a message, right?
You'd hope so. Was there an attempt at systemic reform afterwards?
Yes. The Salovey Commission was set up, came up with like 165 recommendations. But here's the paradox again. The same structures, the same sort of power brokers who'd allowed the corruption, they were largely in charge of fixing it.
So not everything got implemented.
Exactly. A key proposal for term limits for powerful presiding judges. Rejected. So, while Greylord was a huge success in terms of prosecutions, the systemic reforms, maybe not as deep as they could have been.
And does that shadow linger today?
Well, the overt day-to-day bribery, that seems to be gone. But Chicago. A 2022 report still ranked the Northern District of Illinois as the most corrupt metro area in the U.S.
Still. After all that.
Still, and you still hear about other issues, huge case backlogs, lack of transparency, things that chip away at public confidence. So the fight continues.
Right. Okay, let's head down under. Queensland, Australia. The era of Premier Sir Job York-Peterson. Decades in power. They called it the joke, the Moonlight State. Tells you something, doesn't it?
It really does. The key phrase here is culture of complicity, especially within the police force. It wasn't just individual cops, it was systemic. Built on this warped idea of loyalty, of silence, it enabled a massive protection racket.
Protection for what?
Illegal gambling, brothels, the works. Police, right up to the commissioner, Sir Terry Lewis, were getting the bag.
Literally bags of cash.
Literally brown paper bags stuffed with cash delivered regularly. In return, police looked the other way, allowed organized crime to flourish.
So what finally broke it open? Was it an internal investigation?
No, interestingly, it was journalism, investigative reporting.
The press stepping in.
Exactly. A reporter named Phil Dickey wrote a series of explosive articles. Then came the big one, the Moonlight State expose on ABC's Four Corners program in May 1987. That just blew the lid off everything. Huge public outcry. Political crisis.
So media forced their hand.
Pretty much. The public pressure was immense. The acting premier had no choice but to announce a commission of inquiry. And crucially, it was led by Tony Fitzgerald QC, a senior lawyer known for being fiercely independent. Untouchable.
And he had a strategy.
A brilliant one. He offered key witnesses indemnity from prosecution. Basically, immunity.
Get them to talk without fear of jail time.
Precisely. And it worked. Commissioner Lewis's main bagman, a guy named Jack Herbert, he flipped. He testified, and as the source says, he blew the conspiracy wide open. Spilled everything.
I bet those hearings were captivating.
Oh, absolutely. They were televised, ran for 238 days. People were glued to it, watching these daily revelations of corruption, the bags of cash.
It created this massive tidal wave of anger, as one source put it, and that wave just swept Joe Caterson's National Party out of power in the next election, 1989. A huge political shift.
So the inquiry wasn't just about exposing the past, it was about fixing the future.
Absolutely. Fitzgerald's final report, 630 pages, wasn't just an expose, it was a blueprint for accountability, over 100 recommendations. But the most critical ones, setting up permanent independent watchdog bodies.
Like what?
The Criminal Justice Commission, CJC, and the Electoral and Administrative Review Commission, EARC, designed specifically to prevent this kind of systemic corruption from taking root again, rebuilding governance.
And did it stick? What's the legacy? A profound one. Commissioner Lewis went to jail, lost his knighthood, and today, Queensland has the Crime and Corruption Commission, CCC, a direct descendant of the CJC. It acts as a permanent deterrent, an accountability mechanism. It really set a new national standard for transparency in Australia, from scandal to systemic change.
Okay, let's move to the UK, London, 1970s. We meet Detective Sergeant Derek Ridgewell, British Transport Police, and this story is darker. Not just about money, but about prejudice and ruining lives.
Yeah, Ridgewell wasn't just taking bribes. He was described as a racist predator, systematically abusing his power to frame innocent people.
Mostly young black men.
Primarily, yes. His method was horrifyingly simple. Fabricated confessions, planting evidence lying under oath, perjury. He later admitted chillingly, I just want debt. Like it was like a casual decision.
The human cost must have been immense. The Oval 4, the Stockwell 6.
Exactly, lives ruined. The Oval 4, their conviction stood for 47 years. 47 years protesting their innocence.
Unbelievable.
The Stockwell 6, same story, imprisoned based on lies. And even when they moved him off the anti-mugging squad because of complaints, he just continued. Started framing railway workers for theft. He was eventually caught and convicted himself for theft in 1980. But the damage was done. And for decades, nobody went back to look at the people he'd framed.
Why not? Surely there are signs, red flags.
Oh, absolutely. This is where you see that betrayal of the badge, that catastrophic institutional failure within the BTP, the British Transport Police. Magistrates criticized him back in 72. A high court judge called his testimony outlandish in 73. Media reported on concerns.
And the response?
They just moved him, didn't investigate properly, didn't seem to want to believe one of their own could be so corrupt, perhaps, or maybe didn't want the scandal. And crucially, even after his conviction in 1980, the BTP made zero effort to review his past cases. They just let those wrongful convictions stand for decades.
So how did justice finally come for his victims?
It was a long, slow grind. The real turning point was the creation of the Criminal Cases Review Commission, the CCRC, in 1995.
An independent body.
Yes, specifically set up to investigate potential miscarriages of justice. It finally provided a pathway outside the police and original courts to get these historical wrongs looked at.
And they took on Ridgewell's cases.
They did. Starting around 2013, a really meticulous and painstaking review, as the sources describe it. It led to, I think, 13 convictions linked to Ridgewell eventually being quashed, overturned, many of them after the victims had already died.
Posthumous exonerations.
Yeah. It's what they call long-tail justice. Really difficult work tracking down victims or their families after so many decades.
Has the BTP acknowledged its failures?
Yes. They have issued a formal apology, called Ridgewell's actions criminal and racist, and admitted the force failed to act.
Is the story over, though? Is there still unfinished business?
There is. Campaigners and the CCRC itself, I believe, have called for a change in the law. They want an automatic, independent review of all major cases handled by any police officer who's later convicted of serious corruption like this.
Seems sensible, right? Makes sense. If an officer is proven corrupt, shouldn't all their serious convictions be checked?
You'd think so. But as of early 2025, the UK Ministry of Justice said it had no plans to do that. So the fight for that reform, that safety net, it continues.
Right. Our final case takes us to Russia. And here, the context is just different. Corruption isn't seen as, a flaw in the system. Sources say it is the system.
Yeah, terms like kleptocracy, crony capitalism get used. Basically, loyalty to the Kremlin, to Putin's vertical of power, is rewarded. And a big reward is control over massive state contracts, especially in areas like defense and construction.
And Deputy Defense Minister Timur Ivanov fits this mold.
Perfectly, a quintessential product of this system. They called him the glamorous general known for his incredibly lavish lifestyle, luxury properties, yachts, all while overseeing military construction projects, billions of rubles flowing through his department.
But then came his downfall. Very sudden, very public.
Stunningly so. Arrested in April 2024, charged with taking an especially large bribe. And it wasn't just him, it triggered a whole purge of other senior defense officials.
What were the specifics against Ivanov?
The official charges involved embezzlement, something like 4.1 billion rubles, over 50 million US dollars linked to dodgy construction deals, buying ferries fraudulently. The political hammer fell soon after. His patron, the long-serving defense minister Sergei Shoigu, was removed in May 2024. Sentenced to 13 years in prison, July 2025. Behind closed doors, a secret trial.
The timing of this, though.
Yeah.
Right in the middle of the war in Ukraine. That contrast must have been stark.
Incredibly jarring. You had Ivanov living this billionaire lifestyle, while reports were coming out about Russian soldiers on the front lines lacking basic equipment. It fueled this narrative of two Russias, this super rich elite, disconnected from the struggles of ordinary people, especially soldiers. Pro-war bloggers, the so-called Z-bloggers, were apparently quite vocal about this, a real risk to morale.
Was this a genuine crackdown on corruption?
Yeah.
Or something else?
That's the crucial question. And the sources strongly suggested something else. They frame it as a purge, not a reform. Meaning, these arrests aren't seen as a real effort to clean up the system. They're seen as a tool, a weapon of political control and elite warfare. It's interpreted as infighting between powerful clans within the Russian elite playing out in public, a way to settle scores, consolidate power, enforce loyalty.
Because the other elements aren't there.
Exactly. There's no independent judiciary to ensure a fair trial, no free press to investigate properly, no real political opposition. So in that context, anti-corruption becomes just another lever of control, not a path to the rule of law.
So what does this tell us about the future of anti-corruption in Russia?
It's telling, isn't it? The Ivanov case definitely broke a taboo. High-level figures aren't untouchable anymore, perhaps. It raises the stakes in these elite battles. But without those fundamental changes, independent courts, free media, it's likely to remain just a cycle of political purges, not real reform. And Russia pulling out of international anti-corruption agreements kind of reinforces that direction, doesn't it?
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. 5 very different countries, 5 intense stories. What are the common threads pulling these together?
Well, a couple of things really stand out as universal truths, I think. First, that culture of impunity. In every single case, the corruption festered because people believed they could get away with it, that they were above the law. It's the breeding ground.
Right.
And second, the damage, the profound and lasting damage to public trust. Once that covenant of justice is broken, rebuilding faith is incredibly hard, takes a long, long time.
And it really highlights the importance of institutions that can step in, doesn't it?
Right.
When the system fails itself.
Absolutely. The critical role of independent institutions, whether it was journalists in Australia, the FBI in the US, those independent prosecutors in the Czech Republic, or the CCRC in the UK. When the formal checks inside the police or judiciary failed, something or someone else had to force the issue, had to demand accountability.
But the outcomes, they really diverged, didn't they?
Massively. And this is maybe the most important distinction. In the democratic countries, Czech Republic, US, Australia, UK, these scandals, painful as they were, ultimately acted as catalysts. They forced change. They led to new oversight bodies, new laws, reforms. Imperfect, sure, often slow, but the direction was generally toward greater accountability, strengthening the rule of law.
Whereas in Russia,
it was the opposite. The Ivanov case wasn't about strengthening the rule of law. It was an exercise in authoritarian control, a political purge within a system that remains fundamentally kleptocratic. It actually reinforced centralized arbitrary power. No real reform resulted.
So the final lesson seems pretty stark.
It really is. Corruption itself, that's a universal vulnerability. Every system is susceptible. But the capacity for self-correction, that is not universal. A genuine reckoning, genuine reform, it seems to require this whole ecosystem of accountability. You need the independent courts, the free press, the empowered watchdogs, all working together, able to challenge power effectively.
Wow, what a journey through these 5 deep dives. It really underscores the immense power we give these institutions, police, judiciary, and the absolute necessity
of that trust we place in them.
And that really brings it back to you listening to this. How do these stories resonate? Thinking about justice, about trust in your own context, what parts of that ecosystem of accountability do you see working well, or maybe wish you saw more of in your own society?
Yeah, and maybe a final thought to chew on. If tackling corruption truly is this long generational battle, what's our role? What part do we play in demanding and upholding the integrity of our own institutions? And maybe more chillingly, what's the real long-term price if we don't? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.